A lonely boy pushed everyone away, till one waitress's hug changed his world forever. Emma had worked at the little cafe near the corner of Maple Street for almost 3 years. She knew every regular customer's favorite drink, their usual seat, and even the way they smiled when they were having a bad day. Her job wasn't just about serving coffee and sandwiches. It was about creating a small, warm space in a busy, often cold world. She loved to see people's faces light up when they walked in, even if it was just for a moment. She believed that little acts of kindness, a smile, a joke, a patient listening ear could make a difference in someone's day, maybe even in their life. One chilly autumn morning, the cafe doors jingled as they opened, and Emma glanced up from arranging the pastries in the display case. In walked a man she didn't recognize, holding the hand of a small boy. The man looked tired, worn out from worry, or perhaps sleepless nights, and the boy was clearly different. His body was smaller, his movements awkward, and his legs shook slightly as he walked. Emma noticed immediately that he had difficulty keeping his balance, and his hands were restless. Fidgeting with the strap of his backpack as if it were a lifeline, Emma's heart went out to him instantly. She had worked in customer service long enough to see that the world wasn't always kind to people who were different. She had seen children like him ignored, stared at, or whispered about. And yet there was something about this boy that made her want to help him feel safe. Even before she knew his story, "Good morning," Emma called, her voice bright and warm as she approached the table. "Welcome. Can I get you something to drink?" The boy's eyes flicked toward her for a brief moment, but then he quickly looked away. He crossed his arms tightly over his chest and hunched his small shoulders, as if trying to disappear from the world. Emma's smile faltered for a second, but only slightly. She had seen this before, children who had built walls around themselves after being hurt too many times. She knelt slightly so she could be closer to his level and spoke softly. "That's okay," she said gently. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to. I'll still bring you something special." The boy didn't respond. He stared at the table, his fingers tracing patterns on the wood. His father, who had introduced himself as Mr. Parker, gave Emma a weak, embarrassed smile. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. He doesn't really talk to strangers." Emma shook her head. "Don't worry about it," she replied. "I just want to make you feel welcome here. That's all." Mr. Parker nodded, looking both relieved and grateful. He guided the boy to sit in a corner booth where the sunlight streamed in softly, lighting up the little boy's face, in a way that made Emma notice something else, a faint shadow of sadness in his eyes. She wondered what had caused it, what experiences had made this little boy so wary of the world, as she walked back to the counter to prepare their drinks. Emma thought about her own life and the people she had lost. She remembered her younger brother, who had passed away suddenly when they were children. She remembered the feeling of helplessness, of wanting to comfort someone, but not knowing how. Maybe that was why she felt a tug toward this boy, a desire to reach out. Even though he was pushing her away, Emma brought over the drinks and placed them carefully on the table. The boy didn't look up, but his father whispered a quiet thank you as he took a sip. Emma tried to make small talk, asking about school, favorite games, or what kind of books he liked. Still, the boy remained silent, his eyes fixed on the table. She realized something important that day. Kindness wasn't always about words. Sometimes it was about presence. Just being there, showing patience, showing that someone cared without demanding anything in return, could be enough to plant a small seed of trust. She left the table with a smile, telling the boy, "I hope you enjoy it. I'll be around if you want to talk." The next few days, Emma found herself thinking about him constantly. She wondered what it was like to live in a world where you felt different all the time, where even the simplest tasks could be met with stares or pity. She wondered what it must feel like to lose a parent and suddenly see the world as a place full of people who didn't understand you. She couldn't stop herself from hoping that, somehow, she could make a small difference in his life. On the third day, when the boy and his father returned, Emma decided to try something new. Instead of only serving their order, she brought a small drawing she had made, a cartoon of a superhero holding a tray of food. She placed it gently on the table and said, "I thought you might like this. It's a superhero cafe hero, someone who makes people smile." The boy glanced at it for a fleeting second. He didn't say anything, but Emma noticed the tiniest flicker in his eyes, a moment where he looked almost curious. That small flicker was enough for Emma to know that maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to notice that the world could be safe, that there could be people who wouldn't hurt him, who wouldn't laugh at him or push him aside. She didn't push further. She didn't demand a smile or a word. She simply continued her work, always keeping an eye on him, always ready to offer kindness when he was ready to accept it. Emma believed that trust, like a delicate flower, took time to bloom. You couldn't force it, but with gentle care and patience, it could grow. Over the next few weeks, this became a quiet routine. Emma would see the boy, Liam, come in with his father. He would sit quietly, sometimes staring at the window, sometimes tracing patterns on the table. And every day Emma would find a way to reach out without overwhelming him, a small joke, a funny napkin drawing, a kind word. Slowly, she began to notice tiny changes, a glance, a fleeting smile, a moment where he didn't flinch when she came near. Emma didn't know it yet, but these small moments were the beginning of something extraordinary. A bond was forming, one built on trust, patience, and quiet understanding. Liam, who had pushed everyone away for so long, was starting to notice that not all people were a threat. Not all hands would push him down, and not all smiles hid judgment by the end of that first month. Emma had begun to feel a deep sense of responsibility toward Liam, not as a waitress serving food, but as someone who could offer him a small piece of the love and care he had been missing. And though she didn't know it, Liam was beginning to feel something too, a sense of safety, a small hope that maybe the world could be kinder than he had believed. It was a quiet start, unremarkable to anyone else in the cafe, but for Emma and Liam, it was the beginning of a journey that would change both of their lives forever. And all it took was one simple act of patience, one warm smile, and the willingness to care for someone who had learned to close their heart to the world. Days turned into weeks, and the cafe continued to be a quiet sanctuary for Liam and his father, Mr. Parker. Emma noticed patterns in their visits, the way Liam held his cup tightly, the way he seemed to brace himself when anyone came near, even when they were only passing by. She had watched countless children in her life, but there was something unique about Liam. His silence wasn't just shyness, it was armor, a shield he had built over years of disappointment, fear, and loss. Emma often wondered what it was like to live inside his mind. She imagined the countless moments he had faced the world and been rejected, the sneers, the whispers, the pitying looks from strangers that made him feel smaller than he already did. She thought about how lonely he must have felt when he watched other children play freely, climb, run, and laugh without worry. That kind of longing could make anyone turn inward, build walls, and push away even the kindest people. Emma understood that instinctively. One morning, the cafe was quieter than usual. The autumn wind rattled the windows, and leaves swirled in the streets outside. Liam and his father arrived, and Emma noticed that Liam's face was tighter than normal. There was a tension in his small body, an alertness that told her he was carrying something heavier than usual. She approached their table as softly as she could. "Good morning, Liam," she said warmly, placing the menu in front of him. "Would you like your usual?" He didn't respond. Not a glance, not a word. His lips pressed together, and he looked down at the table, his tiny shoulders stiff. Emma noticed the subtle shake of his hands as he touched the napkin. Something was clearly bothering him, but he had learned to hide it. To protect himself by retreating further into silence, Emma decided not to push. She took a step back and smiled at Mr. Parker instead. "Would you like your usual coffee today?" she asked. His father smiled weakly, grateful that Emma understood Liam enough to respect his silence. "Yes, thank you," he said, while preparing their order. Emma reflected on how easily people gave up on children like Liam. Many had tried before her: teachers, therapists, even family friends, but Liam had built a habit of pushing everyone away. He had learned early that opening up often led to disappointment or pain. Emma thought about her own brother, who had struggled in ways that no one seemed to understand. She remembered the nights she had sat by his bedside, holding his hand, talking softly when he was afraid. Maybe that experience gave her the patience to see beyond Liam's walls, to recognize that beneath the anger, the fear, and the silence, there was a child craving love and understanding. Emma brought over their drinks. Placing them carefully on the table, without a word, Liam did not acknowledge her presence. Instead, he stared at the coffee cup, as if it were some fragile object that might shatter at any moment. Emma leaned slightly, lowering her voice. "I hope it's the way you like it," she said gently. She didn't expect a response, but she wanted Liam to hear her care, even if he couldn't yet respond. Over the next few days, Emma tried little gestures to connect with him. She drew funny faces on napkins, added tiny notes saying "you're awesome" or "smile today," and even occasionally made a silly joke about a clumsy coffee cup slipping off the counter. Liam didn't laugh, not yet. Sometimes he didn't even look at her. But Emma noticed something subtle, a twitch of his lips, a fleeting glance, or a small grip on the napkin that suggested he had noticed her. Kindness. Emma realized that progress wasn't going to come in grand gestures. It was in the tiny, almost invisible moments. Every day she made a choice to keep showing up, to keep offering a small thread of connection. She remembered something her mother had once told her. The heart will open when it feels safe, not when it feels pressured. Emma understood that now more than ever. Liam's heart was closed, but safety, patience, and gentle kindness could slowly break through the barriers he had built. One afternoon, Liam seemed especially restless. He shifted in his seat, tapping his fingers against the table, and his face was clouded with frustration. Mr. Parker tried to soothe him, speaking softly, "It's okay, Liam. Just relax." But Liam's shoulders stiffened, and he muttered something that was almost inaudible. Emma approached cautiously. "I can bring a coloring book if you want," she said, kneeling slightly to be closer to his level. "Or maybe you'd like to draw on the napkin? I can help." Liam didn't respond at first. His eyes flicked toward her, and for a second, there was a spark of curiosity there, quickly replaced by his usual hesitation. Emma waited, giving him the time he needed. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he picked up a pen. He began to draw small, hesitant lines, wobbly circles that grew into shapes. Emma smiled quietly, praising his effort without demanding anything. "That's really good," she said softly. "You have a great hand for drawing." Liam's fingers trembled slightly, but he didn't push her away. This small interaction, seemingly insignificant to anyone else, was monumental for Liam. It was a tiny step forward, a moment when he allowed someone to see him and his abilities without judgment. Emma felt a rush of hope. Over the next few weeks, this pattern continued. Liam still didn't speak much, but he began responding with gestures and nod. A brief smile, a glance that acknowledged Emma's presence. Emma noticed that he was beginning to trust her, to understand that she wasn't like the others who had failed him or treated him with pity. He realized she genuinely cared and that her world wasn't going to pressure him to speak or act before he was ready. One evening, Emma stayed behind after her shift to clean the cafe. She thought about Liam and how his small gestures had started to break through the walls he had built. She remembered her brother again, thinking about how patience and love had helped him heal in ways medicine never could. She felt a deep determination to continue supporting Liam, knowing that the next step, the one that might change everything, was just around the corner. Emma's small acts of kindness, her patience, and her understanding created a new world for Liam, a world where he could be himself without fear, a world where he could begin to trust again. And slowly, ever so slowly, the boy who had pushed everyone away was starting to feel that maybe, just maybe, it was safe to let someone in. By the end of this part of their journey, Liam hadn't spoken more than a few words. He still avoided eye contact at times. But something profound had begun. The seed of trust had been planted. Emma had shown him that someone could care without demanding anything in return. She had shown him that he didn't have to be perfect, or talk, or smile, to be worthy of love. And for a child who had spent years hiding from the world, that was everything in the quiet moments of the cafe. As the sun filtered through the windows and cast gentle light on Liam's small, tense frame, Emma felt the faintest stir of hope. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Trust, once broken, takes time to repair. But Emma believed with all her heart that love, patience, and kindness could do what nothing else had: melt the walls around a wounded heart. And in that simple, unassuming cafe, a transformation was beginning. One gentle step at a time. It was a rainy afternoon, and the cafe had a quiet, almost melancholy atmosphere. The windows were streaked with raindrops, and the smell of wet pavement drifted inside. Emma was wiping down tables and refilling the sugar jars, humming softly to herself, when the familiar jingle of the cafe door caught her attention. Liam and his father, Mr. Parker, stepped inside, shaking off the rain as they moved toward their usual corner booth. Liam's small frame was hunched, his arms tightly wrapped around his body, and his lips were pressed into a hard line. Today, there was more tension than usual. Emma immediately sensed it. Something had happened outside the cafe, something that had left Liam restless and upset. She walked over to their table, placing the menus in front of them. "Hi, Liam." "Hi, Mr. Parker. Would you like your usual?" she asked gently, her voice warm but careful not to push too hard. Liam didn't answer. Not a word. His eyes avoided hers completely, fixed instead on the dark spots of rain on the window. His fingers drummed nervously on the edge of the table. Mr. Parker gave Emma a small apologetic look. "He's had a rough day," he said quietly, almost to himself. "The kids at school. They were unkind, and he's been..." "Upset?" Emma nodded, kneeling slightly to be closer to Liam's level. She had seen this before, the way negative experiences could reinforce his fear of the world, making him retreat even further into his shell. "It's okay," she said softly. "You're safe here. I promise." Liam stiffened, but he didn't push her away. He just lowered his gaze further, staring at the table as if it were a shield. Emma's heart ached for him. She could feel the weight of his pain, the loneliness that had wrapped around him like a heavy blanket. She knew that if she could just reach him even a little, it might be the start of a turning point, the moment when the boy, who had spent so long pushing everyone away, could finally feel someone cared. As she walked to the counter to prepare their order, she thought about how often people underestimate the power of presence. It wasn't always about words, or grand gestures, or even understanding every detail of someone's pain. Sometimes it was about simply being there, offering quiet support, and letting them know that they were not alone. Emma had always believed that small, consistent acts of kindness could eventually reach even the most closed-off hearts. She had no idea, though, just how much this belief would be tested today when she brought their drinks over. Liam's hand accidentally tipped the cup of juice, sending it spilling onto the table. The boy's eyes widened, panic flashing across his face. He opened his mouth, clearly wanting to say something, but all that came out was a sharp, frightened shout. "Go away. I don't need help." The cafe went silent. A few patrons glanced over curiously, some with concern, some with pity. Mr. Parker quickly apologized, his face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," he said, trying to calm Liam. "It's okay, buddy. It's just an accident." But Emma didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice, didn't show any frustration. Instead, she knelt down beside Liam once again, close enough to be comforting, but careful not to crowd him. She placed her hand gently on his arm, speaking in a calm, soothing voice. "It's okay," she said. "You don't have to be perfect. Accidents happen, and I'm not upset." For a moment, Liam froze. No one had ever spoken to him like this before. No one had ever looked at him with understanding instead of impatience, pity, or judgment. He had spent so many years preparing for rejection that he didn't know what to do when someone treated him with genuine care. His small body trembled, a mixture of fear, confusion, and longing evident in his eyes. Emma made a choice in that moment. Without a second thought, she opened her arms and hugged him. Not a formal, polite hug, a real warm, safe hug that told him without words that it was okay to let go, to feel, to be human. Liam stiffened at first. His body was rigid, as if he had never been touched like this before. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, he began to relax. His shoulders sank slightly, and the tension in his hands eased. Tears began to form in his eyes. And then, before anyone could say a word, he started to cry, deep, Shuddering sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside him, Emma held him tightly, whispering softly, "It's okay. You're safe. You don't have to be strong all the time." The cafe seemed to disappear around them. The rain, the quiet patrons, the mundane background noise, none of it mattered. In that moment, it was just Emma and Liam, two souls connected by compassion and trust. Mr. Parker stood frozen nearby, his own tears welling up as he watched his son finally let someone in. After years of seeing Liam withdraw, of watching him build walls against the world, he could hardly believe what was happening. That single hug, simple and unassuming, broke through years of fear and loneliness. Liam felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: safety, acceptance, love. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the need to push everyone away. He didn't feel the weight of judgment or pity pressing down on him. He just felt held after what felt like an eternity, but was only a few minutes. Liam pulled back slightly, resting his forehead against Emma's shoulder. His breathing was still shaky, but there was a calmness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He looked up at her, and for the first time, he smiled, a small, tentative smile. But Emma smiled back, her own eyes wet with tears. "See," she said softly, "it's okay. You're not alone." Mr. Parker approached and knelt beside them. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I've never seen him like this before. Thank you for being so kind." Emma shook her head gently. "No need to thank me," she said. "I'm just glad he's safe and knows that someone cares." From that moment on, something inside Liam began to shift. The boy who had spent years hiding from the world, refusing to speak, avoiding eye contact, and pushing everyone away, had experienced a moment of pure, unconditional kindness. He realized that not everyone would hurt him. Not everyone would make him feel small, and that sometimes a simple gesture, a hug, a kind word, a patient presence could change everything. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. Liam didn't speak much, but he stayed close to Emma, occasionally resting his head on the table, feeling the calmness she offered. He didn't need to talk. The hug had said everything. It had conveyed safety, love, and acceptance in a way words never could. Emma watched him, her heart full. She knew that this was only the beginning, that Liam had a long journey ahead to heal from years of hurt and fear. But she also knew that today marked a turning point. He had let someone in. He had felt kindness without fear. And he had discovered for the first time in a long time that he could trust again as the rain continued to fall outside. Emma cleaned up the small mess from the spilled juice and returned to her counter. But her thoughts stayed with Liam. She knew that the next days and weeks would be full of small challenges, small steps forward and backward. But she had hope. Hope that the bond they had begun to form would grow stronger. Hope that Liam would continue to open his heart, and hope that one day he would fully embrace the love and support that had reached him in that quiet, rainy cafe afternoon, and in that small, unassuming cafe, where the world outside was often harsh and unkind. A miracle had quietly unfolded. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real. And for Liam, it was life-changing. The boy who had pushed everyone away had finally begun to understand that he didn't have to face the world alone, and that sometimes a simple hug could heal a heart that had been broken for far too long. After that rainy afternoon, something began to change in Liam, the boy who had once pushed everyone. A way started showing small signs of life that had been missing for years. It didn't happen all at once, and it wasn't always easy. Liam still had moments of fear, moments when the walls he had built around himself rose again, threatening to keep him isolated. But slowly, steadily, Emma's consistent kindness and patient presence began to make a difference. When the Parkers returned to the cafe, a few days later, Emma noticed a subtle change in Liam. He didn't look away immediately. His fingers were still fidgety, and his lips pressed together, but he held her gaze for a second longer than before. Emma smiled at him gently, nodding toward his usual seat. Liam shuffled over quietly and sat down, glancing at the small drawing she had left on the table, a cartoon of a superhero holding a cup of coffee. This time, he picked it up and studied it carefully. "That's really good," Emma said softly, kneeling to meet his eyes. Did you make this?" For the first time in weeks, Liam nodded slightly. No words, just a tiny movement that meant more than any sentence could. Emma's heart swelled with hope. That small acknowledgement showed that he was beginning to trust her, beginning to let her see him. Trust had been the missing piece in Liam's world. Trust in someone else. Why trust that not everyone would hurt him or make him feel small? Emma understood that every little step forward, no matter how small, was a victory. Over the next few weeks, Liam started to respond in other small ways. He would ask for his favorite drink, sometimes adding a smile when Emma delivered it with a joke. Occasionally, he would speak one or two words, usually soft, almost shy, but clearly intentional. "Thank you," he said once, and Emma's eyes filled with tears. She knew that for Liam these words were monumental. He had spent so much of his life holding back, closing himself off, and now he was opening up one day. Emma decided to leave a small surprise for him on the table. She had made a tiny paper crown, decorated with colorful stickers and the words "King of Courage." When Liam saw it, his eyes widened. He picked it up carefully, turning it over in his hands, and then almost shyly placed it on his head. Emma laughed softly. "Perfect. You look amazing," she said. Liam's lips curled into the smallest, shyest smile. It was a real smile, not forced or hesitant, and for Emma, was worth more than gold. His father, Mr. Parker, watched quietly from his seat, his own heart full of gratitude. He had seen his son struggle, seen him retreat into silence, seen him push everyone away. And now, slowly, he was seeing a new side of Liam emerge, a side filled with hope, his curiosity, and a willingness to connect. Mr. Parker could hardly believe the transformation. Emma's kindness, her patience, her simple choice to care had begun to unlock a world that Liam had almost given up on, as days turned into weeks. Liam's visits to the cafe became more than just a routine. They became a source of comfort, a place where he could feel safe and understood. He started asking for small favors, like extra napkins to draw on, or occasionally helping Emma carry plates to nearby tables. These were small actions, but to Liam, they were monumental. They represented trust, cooperation, and the understanding that he was capable of more than he had. Emma noticed that Liam began to look forward to coming to the cafe. On some mornings, he would hurry in with a shy grin, dragging his father along, eager to see what new little surprises she might have for him. He started to engage in small conversations, asking about the pastries, commenting on the weather, or even asking questions about Emma's day. It was as if a tiny spark of curiosity, long dormant, had been reignited within him. At home, Mr. Parker noticed changes too. Liam began to speak more, even in small sentences, expressing his needs and feelings in ways he hadn't before. He seemed more confident, more willing to try new things, and more willing to engage with the world outside the protective walls he had built. Emma's presence had created a ripple effect that extended far beyond the cafe. Her kindness had reminded Liam that the world could be safe, that there were people who would not judge or hurt him, and that he was capable of connection. One afternoon, Emma stayed after her shift to clean and organize the cafe. She thought about Liam and how far he had come in such a short time. She remembered the first day he had walked in, silent, tense, and guarded. Compared it to now, the little smiles, the small conversations, the trust he had begun to place in her. It amazed her how much a single act of genuine care, a hug on a rainy day, could start such a profound transformation. Emma also reflected on her own feelings. She had grown attached to Liam, not just as a customer, but as a little boy who had taught her so much about patience, resilience, and the power of kindness. Every small victory, every tiny smile reminded her that the simplest gestures could have the deepest impact. She felt a quiet sense of pride and fulfillment, knowing that she had helped create a safe space for Liam to heal. One evening, as the cafe was quiet and the golden light of the setting sun spilled across the floor, Liam surprised Emma. He handed her a small drawing he had made, a colorful depiction of the cafe, with little stick figures of Emma and himself smiling. At the bottom, in shaky letters, he had written, "Thank you for caring." Emma's eyes filled with tears. She knelt down beside him and whispered, "You don't have to thank me. I care because I see you, and you're amazing just as you are." That moment crystallized something profound. Liam had begun to internalize the lesson that kindness was real, he could be himself without fear, and that love and trust were not things to be feared. He had started to heal not only from the sadness of losing his mother, but also from years of feeling isolated and misunderstood. Emma's consistent, gentle presence had given him a new lens through which to see the world, a lens filled with hope, safety, and the possibility of connection. As the weeks turned into months, Liam's confidence continued to grow. He started to make small friends at school, encouraged by the trust and self-esteem he had developed at the cafe. He even began attending therapy more willingly, knowing that he had someone rooting for him, someone who believed in his strength and his capacity to heal. Emma's role in his life, though seemingly small to the world, created a foundation upon which Liam could build a brighter future. Through it all, Emma never demanded gratitude or acknowledgement. She never forced Liam to speak or smile. She simply continued to show up with patience, kindness, and understanding. And in doing so, she taught him a lesson that no textbook or therapy session could convey, that trust, once earned, could heal even the most wounded heart. By the end of this period, Liam had undergone a transformation that was evident to everyone who knew him. He laughed more freely, spoke more openly, and showed a curiosity about the world that had been absent before. Most importantly, he had begun to open his heart, realizing that people could care without judgment, without conditions, and without expecting anything in return. Emma, watching from behind the counter, often reflected on the journey they had taken together. She knew that there would still be challenges ahead, but she also knew that Liam now had the tools, patience, trust, and hope to navigate them. She had witnessed a child reclaiming his ability to love and to trust, a gift that was priceless and life-changing. And in that small cafe, amidst the clinking of cups and the soft hum of conversation, a quiet miracle had taken place. The boy who had pushed everyone away had learned to open his heart. Thanks to a simple act of kindness and the unwavering presence of someone who truly cared, Emma had not just served food and drinks. She had served hope, connection, and the possibility of a brighter, happier life for a child who had once felt utterly alone. Years passed, and the little cafe on Maple Street remained a special place for Liam and his family. What had once been a quiet corner where a lonely boy had hidden from the world had transformed into a sanctuary full of laughter, warmth, and connection. Emma continued to work there, her smile as bright as ever, but now it carried a deeper meaning. She had not only served food and drinks, but had quietly nurtured a child's trust, confidence, and hope. Liam had grown taller, his legs still needing braces, but his steps were steadier, more confident. He walked into the cafe one afternoon, holding his backpack in one hand and a carefully folded piece of paper in the other. Emma noticed immediately the gleam in his eyes, a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He approached the counter, where she stood wiping a cup with a towel, and held out the paper. "What's this?" Emma asked gently, curiosity softening her voice. "It's for you," Liam said, his voice steady but shy. I made it." Emma took the paper carefully and unfolded it. Inside was a colorful bracelet, carefully made from small beads and threads. On one of the beads, etched in neat letters, was a short message: "For the hug that changed my life." Emma's eyes filled with tears. She knelt down to Liam's level, touched the bracelet gently, and whispered, "Oh, Liam, this is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me." Liam's cheeks flushed with a mixture of pride and shyness. He looked at Emma and said softly, "You made me feel safe. You made me not afraid." His words were simple, but they carried years of pain, isolation, and healing in them. Emma smiled, holding back tears, and said, "I didn't do anything magical. You let yourself trust. You let yourself feel. That's what matters most." From that moment on, Liam's life seemed to open up in ways no one could have imagined. School, which had once been a source of anxiety and fear, became a place of excitement. He started participating in classes, asking questions, and even joining small groups for art and games. Emma's unwavering support had given him a foundation of trust and self-worth. He was finally able to step into the world with confidence. At home, Mr. Parker noticed the incredible change as well. Liam spoke more freely, expressed his feelings without hesitation, and even helped his father with small tasks around the house. He laughed more, shared stories, and occasionally talked about his dreams, things he had never done before. The grief from losing his mother was still a part of him, but it no longer defined his world. Through Emma's patience and care, he had learned that there were people who could love and support him. Without judgment or expectation, Emma continued to encourage him. Not with grand gestures, but with consistent acts of care and attention. She would greet him with a smile every time he arrived, ask about his day, and celebrate his achievements, no matter how small. Liam, in turn, began helping her in the cafe, sometimes carrying menus, sometimes setting tables, and sometimes just drawing little sketches for customers. These simple activities gave him a sense of responsibility and pride, reinforcing the belief that he was capable, valued, and loved. One afternoon, while Liam was helping Emma serve a table, he stopped and looked up at her. I like helping here," he said quietly. "It makes me happy." Emma knelt down to his level, her eyes shining. "I'm so proud of you, Liam. You've grown so much." The cafe had become more than a workplace or a place to eat. It had become a home for Liam's heart, a place where he could express himself freely and safely. He had learned to trust, to communicate, to connect, and most importantly, to love and be loved in return. Emma had been the guide, the steady hand, the source of unconditional support that had helped him reclaim his life. Over time, Liam even began forming friendships outside of the cafe. Children at school noticed his confidence, his willingness to engage, and his genuine kindness. He shared stories about Emma in the cafe, and how one simple act, a hug on a rainy day, had taught him the power of kindness. Teachers and friends alike were amazed at his transformation. Where once there had been fear and withdrawal, there was now laughter, curiosity, and a willingness to embrace life. As Liam grew older, he never forgot Emma. On his birthdays, he would bring small gifts or drawings for her. On holidays, he would ask to help decorate the cafe. Emma, in turn, celebrated every milestone with him, quietly proud of the resilience, courage, and love he had cultivated within himself. Their bond had grown from a single act of care into a lifelong connection, one that had shaped both their lives in profound ways. One evening, as the cafe quieted and the golden light of sunset filled the space, Liam handed Emma a letter he had written himself. "I wanted to tell you something," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. Emma took the letter and read it silently. It spoke of gratitude, of love, and of the difference one person's kindness could make in the life of another. "You saved me," Liam wrote, "not with magic, not with gifts, but with your heart. You taught me how to love again." Emma held the letter close, tears streaming down her cheeks. She knelt beside him and whispered, "No, Liam, you saved yourself. I just reminded you that it was safe to feel again. Your courage made this possible." That night, as Liam and his father walked home, Mr. Parker squeezed his son's shoulder gently. "You've grown into such a remarkable young man," he said softly. "I'm so proud of you," Liam smiled, thinking about Emma and the journey that had brought him here. He had faced fear, grief, and isolation. And yet he had emerged stronger, more confident, and more capable of loving and being loved than ever before. Emma watched from the cafe window as they walked away, her heart full. She knew that the world outside could still be harsh. But Liam now had something invaluable: trust, hope, and the knowledge that there were people who would care for him no matter what. He had learned that love was not something to fear, but something to embrace. In the following years, Liam continued to grow and thrive. He pursued hobbies he had once thought impossible, made friends who respected and valued him, and even helped other children who struggled with fear or self-doubt. He shared his story quietly, teaching others about the power of patience, kindness, and understanding. The lessons Emma had shown him had rippled outward, touching not just his life but the lives of everyone he encountered. Emma remained a steadfast presence in his life, not just as a waitress or mentor, but as a friend and a guiding light. Together, they had proven that sometimes the simplest gestures, a hug, a smile, a moment of genuine care, could change a life forever. Liam had once pushed everyone away, afraid of the world and of being hurt. But with patience, kindness, and unwavering support, he had learned to open his heart, trust again, and embrace life fully. And in that little cafe, where the story had begun, a boy who had once been lonely and afraid had become a young man who understood the meaning of love, trust, and hope. The walls he had built for years were gone, replaced by courage, confidence, and the knowledge that he was never truly alone. Emma had given him the gift of safety, understanding, and unwavering care, and in return, Liam had learned to give himself the same gift, the gift of believing in his own heart. That cafe, once just a place to eat and work, had become a symbol of transformation, resilience, and the extraordinary power of human kindness. And for Liam, it would forever be the place where he first learned to trust, to feel, and to love again, a lesson that would guide him for the rest of his life.